MagicQ PC Part 6, Getting Lights On. So if you're doing this tutorial series, make sure that you've gone through and done the tutorials in order. If you have, in Part 5 we've done patching. So we have a number of fixtures patched in here ready to go in our MagicQ PC. So the next thing we're going to do is talk about getting some lights on. Before we do that, to make it a little more simpler, we're going to create some more custom windows. So if you followed the tutorials, I'm pressing my control key now on my keyboard. We have a palettes window and a patch window. We're going to create two new windows up here to help us work. For the time being, I'm just going to close this by clicking on the X. I'm going to click on a group window down here by clicking on group. It's going to open up the group window. Now I want to place this in a certain location. So I'm going to go to view, and I'm going to say I want this to be over to the left side here. All right, and one more thing we're going to do. So we're looking at groups, and MagicQ automatically created groups for us. This is all of our incandescent dimmers. This is our color dash par hexes. This is our color band strip lights, and this is our Rogue R1 beams. We're going to do one thing while we have the groups window selected. Rather than just look at the groups, we're going to say view heads. So right now it is showing us all of our heads. Heads 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, which are the incandescents. Head 21, 22, 23, and 24, which is our color dash par hexes. 25, 26, 27, which is our color band, and then 28 and 29, which is our Rogue 1 beams. Now, we're going to add an intensity window. We're going to click the intensity button here, and an intensity window will come up. We're going to say move this over to the right side, so we're going to go view right. Now notice this window is actually hiding behind there, the group window. So now we have our group window on the left and our intensity window on the right hand side. Now that we have this set up, I'm going to click record, hold down my control key, and click up here in this empty layout button. So now we can jump around. We have palettes, we have our patch window, and then we have our layout. Now the layout window is currently called layout 3. We can access that with the layout 3 button, but I'm going to rename that, and remember how you rename here. We're going to go set, press my control key, click on layout. Now I can either type on my keyboard or type up here. I'm going to call this intensity. And then hit enter or return. So now when we look up, this will be called an intensity. So we have palettes, patch, and intensity. We're going to create one more window here, and that is going to be, I'm going to close these guys up, get them out of the way. I'm going to press my program button, and this is going to be the programmer window. We're going to save this to a soft button up here also. So again, we're going to go record, press my control key down, click on this soft button up here, and it says layout 4. We're going to rename that. So I'll go click on set, press my control key, click on here, and call this program. Enter. So now that we look, we have 4 soft buttons. By holding down the control key to look at these, we have palettes, we have our patch window, we have our intensity window, and we have our program window. All right, let's go to the intensity window and show you what you can do there. This is just going to make it a lot easier to see what's actually going on. So what we have here, what we're looking at is all of our heads, and there's some information up here that shows that this is an incandescent. It says H1 for head 1. There's the DMX address. It's universe 1. Address is channel 001, and this is called front of house. Head 2, the address is universe 1, address 3, or channel 3, front of house. So you get the idea. Same thing down here. Here's our color dash par hex. It's head 21. It's universe 1, channel 40 it starts at, and then etc. for these. So just a little bit of information in these boxes here. Now, there are several ways to select heads and get intensities on in the program. You'll find the same thing with this program. There's many ways to approach things. Again, I'm going to try to keep this simplistic. so that we don't get too confusing. We don't need to show you all the different ways, but some ways that you might find the quickest and the easiest way. All right, if you're a keypad person, you might want to use the keypad to select things. So there is a format that you have to know to select things, as most light consoles have. To select a light in this using the keypad, for example, to select head number 1, down here I would click 1 at. Now you'll notice that head 1 is selected. It turns red. That's why we did this window thing here, because now we can see what heads are selected, because they will turn red to show that that light or that particular head is selected. Also notice that when this head was selected, this intensity for head 1 over here got a little highlighting around the slider. You can also input an intensity. So while this head is selected, I can say at 5, enter. Now I've set that at 50%. The console's intelligent, so it understands that if you say at 5, you probably mean at 50%. If you really want to put it at 5%, you're going to have to type at 0.5, enter. Now it's going to be at 5%. Notice that, and I'm going to put it back at 50%, at 5, enter, so now it's at 50. Notice that when we activated intensity, that this intensity lit up over here. So we have that head number 1 selected, and then the intensity changed over here. And you can see it says head 1 front of house, R3 is the gel color we have in, and it says that it's 50%. Now we can select other lights, or we can select groups of lights. So if we wanted to, we can say 1 through 5 at. So now I've selected heads 1 through 5, and now I can say at 5, enter. It'll put all those heads at 50%. At 3, all those heads are at 30%. So you can go through and do that. If you want to select a larger group or different groups, we can do 1 through 10 minus light 8. I don't want to use head 8. Enter. So now notice that it did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It skipped head 8 because I put minus 8, 9, and 10. And then I can do the same thing here. I can go at 2 for 20%. At 5, enter for 50%. All right, so it's an easy way from the keypad down here to actually access lights. If you want to unselect these lights, you simply type 0 at, and then they're all unselected. Now, notice that the intensity level stayed up. That's because these lights have been programmed at that intensity level, and they are currently at that intensity level. One way we can see that is looking at the programmer window. Now, in this program, before you put something into a queue, it goes into the programmer first, which we can look at through the programmer window. So again, I'm going to hold down my control key and click on that program window we created. And notice that we have lights 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, and 10 at 50%. The lights are not currently selected, but it's telling us that there's a new intensity setting for these lights that hasn't been programmed before, and it is set at 50% because we're in the process of programming lights. To clear things out of the programmer, and you notice that once we put some information into the programmer, that this clear button lit up with a red light. That is telling us that we have information sitting in the programmer. So there's been attribute and intensity information put into the programmer. If I click clear, that will remove the information from the programmer. And if we go back, you'll see that there's no longer any intensity information displayed up here. So that intensity information has been removed. Let's go back. Let's just do lights 1 through 5 again. So I'll say 1 through 5 at. They've been selected. Now, besides typing in values down here, again, we have soft buttons around the outside. When you're in certain situations, if those soft buttons are available, you can click them, or you can use the encoders that are next to them. So actually, I can click this soft button, and it goes to 50%, 100%, 0, 50, 100. So actually clicking on the soft button, I can quickly jump to values. Or if I do this encoder here and click on it and then drag downwards with your mouse, or drag upwards. downwards to increase, or upwards. So I can change the encoder, and you'll actually notice the percentage here of intensity that's being input there. So again, several ways to input intensity. Now that I have these lights still selected too, rather than moving as a group, if there's one light here that I want to change the intensity on a little bit, since these faders are highlighted or selected currently because they have that little border around them, I can grab these individually now and move these individually. So if I look at the programmer, I'm going to see that these lights are input at one intensity, but this front of house head number 4 is at a lower intensity. Let's take a look at the programmer. 51%, 51, 51, 20%, 51. So you'll see that that is also working. So you can bring a group of lights up, and then you can adjust individually. Just make sure, you need to make sure that you have the lights selected. Let's do heads 6 through 10. 6 through 10 at. Notice that when I selected 6 through 10, that the other lights became unselected, but now 6 through 10 is selected, and notice that their faders are highlighted, so they're active. So again, I can grab my encoder and I can change the value on there, or I can type in a value from the keypad at 60, at 6, and then that will go in that way, and they're set at 60%. Now, to deselect these lights, we can select a new group of lights. So let's say I want to do my color par hexes, and I want to do intensity here. So that's head 21, 22, 23, and 24. So I'll simply say, type in 21 through 24 at. Again, notice that the other lights are not selected, and now we have the intensity channels here. So I can take my color par hexes, and I can just say at full, enter. So now they go at 100%. Now, with these lights here, we're talking about lights that have more than one attribute. So we're only currently setting the intensity channel on these color par hexes. We're not doing anything else but setting just the intensity channel. So if we look at the programmer for these color par hexes, I'm going to jump over to the programmer. Notice that it says color par hexes 100%, but there's no other information over here. So here we have our incandescents, and they only have one channel of information. So we have the information for those. Those are set at intensity. But our color par hexes, all we've done so far is set the intensity. Go back to my intensity window. Notice too, here is our color band lights, and notice that the intensity windows for here are blacked out. That is because these particular fixtures do not have an intensity channel. If we look back at the patch window, you will discover that the mode that we're running these lights in, they do not have an intensity channel. They're simply a red, green, and blue, and we simply set the red, green, and blue from there, but there's no intensity channel. Our Rogue R1 beam does have an intensity channel on it, so we could do that. Now, another way of selecting and deselecting is visual. I've used the keypad a lot, but I'm going to just start using visual. If I click on here, it selects or unselects. Selects or unselects. So I can simply select my two Rogues, and I can say at full, enter, and then the Rogues will go at full. So you can use a combination of things. You can use keypad commands, you can use encoders, whatever you would like to do to get up there. You can grab individual, since those lights are selected, we can grab individually and adjust those as they go too. Okay, so they are selected. Now before we get out of this window, let me just go back and do a couple things. I'm going to clear out the programmer so everything is out of there. But let's go back to group again, and let's select some lights, and I'll explain a couple of these buttons up here. So we can do, I'm just using visual now, select the lights 1 through 5, and I can do intensity at full, which will do the same thing as going down here and clicking on, at full, enter. So it's, faster to do that, maybe just to click on the button. Let me clear those out. Another button that you have up here is locate. Now the locate button, when you hit a locate button on a fixture, if that fixture has multiple attributes to it, such as our color par dash hexes do, so these have several channels. When they put the fixture definition in for this particular light, they set up what locate would mean. I believe in this case that if we click the locate button for these lights, that it sets the intensity channel to 100%, but it also sets the color channels up to 100%. Let's take a look at that. I'm going to say locate, and notice that our intensity channel went up to 100%, and down here we got the little command heads located. Let's look in the programmer a second, see what's going on. All right, and there we can see, there's in our program window, not only was the intensity set up, but the red, green, blue, white, amber, and amber channels were set to 100%. Ultraviolet was not. In the strobe category, it opened up the iris, because this fixture also requires you to open that in order to see a beam. So it's important to know what your lights are capable of and what each channel is doing on your lights. And in this case here, you would not see any light until you have this open over here. So the locate command is a quick way to get these lights on. Now this is going to look white out on the stage because the dimmer's up. Red, green, blue, white, and amber channels are up at 100%, and it's open, so we're actually going to see a light. But it's a quick way to see where these lights are on stage if you're not sure about where they are or what particular lights you're dealing with. Let me click clear here. Let's go back to our intensity view window again. If I do the same thing with my color bands, and I select the 3 color band lights and do the same thing, locate. Now, we didn't see anything happen here because there's no intensity channel, but I expect that when I look in program, there we go. There's our color band. We have red, green, blue, white, amber, and this one, because of the way that this fixture was defined, it also turned the ultraviolet lights up 100%. So whoever input the information for this particular fixture said that when you hit locate, everything's going to come on at 100% there. All right, so that is handy as far as the locate. Now, if you're dealing with moving lights, let's go back here again to our intensity window, our Rogue R1 beams, and I click locate. Not only is it going to set the intensity channel and probably some of the color channels up, but it's also going to probably point the light straight down onto the stage. So that's another piece of information when you hit the locate button, that it tells that light to do this, to come on at 100%, all of your colors on, or your white color on, whatever white's going to be, and point the light straight down onto the stage. So if we look at this under program, and there's going to be more information in here. So our dimmer's at 100, our pan and tilt is at 0. So for this particular one, it is setting this to 0, which means it's just going to be on forward. The shutter is open. The gobo is open, so it's not using any pattern on there. Focus is not set, prisms are off, and etc. So you can see what the locate command did to this particular light when you click that in. So at least it's a way of getting that light on. I'm going to clear out in there. Again, let's go back to our intensity window. So that explains some of this. The LTP locate is locating just your LTP channels. Let's do a demo real quick. So if I do my color dash pars and I do LTP locate, now you notice that the intensity channels did not come up, but if I look under the programmer, the other channels did. These are LTP channels. Latest takes precedence. And I didn't do a video for this particular series, but I have one in my QLC series where it explains the difference between HTP channels and LTP channels. Basically, LTP channels are going to be non-intensity channels. They're going to be channels that change color or change gobo or change focus or change position like pan and tilt. Those are going to be your LTP channels. Your intensity channel more likely is going to be HTP. So notice here that we hit LTP, that there's no intensity, but the other values are up at 100%. I'm going to clear that out. Back to the intensity. So that shows you what some of these, we're going to stay away from these windows right now. We don't need them. But so LTP locate, your intensity full, and then your locate buttons. We're going to come back shortly to do this view elements button here. All right, so let's go back. Let's get some information in here. Let me just do, I'll do the keypad 1 through 10 at 5, which is 50%. So we have our 10 lights up, looking at the programmer. We have our incandescents up, that's front of house and electric at 50%. Back to intensity. I'm going to do my color dash pars here. I'm going to select them visually just using this. And I'm going to use my encoder and move these up to about 75%, somewhere in that neighborhood. Now, if we look back again in the programmer, we're going to see that we haven't done anything with the color. So now, to do things with color, again, I'm pressing my control key so I can bounce around here. I'm going to go to my palettes window. All right. If we go to color dash par and we click here, it is active, and notice that when you activate that these windows become a slightly lighter color. That means that these windows can be selected. So I can select a color. I can say green, and notice that when I selected my color window green, that some of my encoders along the outside here became active. My red, green, blue, white, amber, and UV. I can use encoders. Also, you can click in the soft buttons here and go from 0 to 100, 0 to 50 to 100, 0 to 50 to 100. Okay? So that's what the soft buttons are. Or we can move this encoder and change that value of green. We can also change some of the other encoders. Now, I'm just going to change the color here real quick to blue. So we've got blue. One of the things I want to show you quickly, just jump back to the programmer for a minute, and notice that our color par hexes, there's a blue with a little white dot. What that means is this is a palette selection. This is a color value that has been set using a palette. So it's not showing you the actual percentage here. It's just saying a little white dot, and the color, the name of this particular palette is blue. So I'm going back to my palettes here. You know, if we look at this, we can actually see values here that this is just 100% blue and our other colors are off. So you can see what that is. Let's change this to green so that we're 100%. And you can also see that there are some buttons up here along the top, some soft buttons that you can select when you're in this color window. Now, don't forget, with this particular light, we have to also open the shutter in order to see color. So I'm going to click over here. So now shutter is open. So we'll have green and we'll have shutter open. Now, it is possible that once you go in here, you can actually go in and create your own colors. So say we have this color of green. Let's go back to our color window by clicking on the header. We're not totally satisfied and we would like to add a little bit of blue in here. And I can add this encoder, and we got a color that we really, really like. All right. And if we look back at the programmer now, let's see what the programmer looks like. All right. You'll notice that it's saying we took the red, green, blue, we took the red, green, white, amber, and UV from the palette, but the blue color has been adjusted. So this has kind of been a custom color here. Let's go back to our palettes page. We can save this color and you can record. Now, recording anything is kind of a standard format. I'm going to click on my color window. I have my custom setting here. I'm just going to click over here on record, and I'm going to click here. Now, this knows already because I clicked there, it's just going to save color information here because this is the color palette window. So now if I were to bounce around, that's my green 100%. Here's my new green color that I saved. And okay, we can call this something. Right now it hasn't been labeled, so again I can press my set key. I can click over here and call this new green. Enter. So now it's entered. So this is a great way if you want to set custom colors for your lights that you don't want to just stick with that. We've now created a custom palette and it's saved in there and it's called new green. Okay, so we have our custom color created in there. I'm going to go back to my programmer and I'm going to remove some of the lights from there. So I'll go back to my programmer. I'm going to take out my color dash par hexes. So I'm going to do a certain command here. First of all, if I had unselected these lights, which remember the command to unselect is 0 at. So now again, there are no heads selected, but we have values in here that have not been recorded anywhere yet. Notice that this now goes to that new green palette. And the useful thing about this is Once you've created that new green palette, you can use it other places in the show. Just beware of this. If you go back to that new green palette and adjust it, it will be anywhere that you use that new green palette setting in the show will also follow that adjustment for that. So say I just want to get these lights out of here. I decided I don't want my color dash pars in. An easy way to do that is we're going to select the lights. So I'm going to say 21 through 24 at lights are selected. Now I'm going to click Shift Clear, and it just clears those lights out. If you click Clear, it clears all of the lights out of the programmer. If you click Shift Clear, it will clear out only the heads that are currently selected. Okay, so I cleared my color dash par hexes out. I'm in the programmer again. I'm going to go back in. Again, you can kind of experiment around. A lot of this will make sense to you. So I'm going to actually close my programmer this way. I'm going to hit this, press my intensity. I'll select my color dash par hexes. I'm going to say at full enter. I'm going to go to the palettes page up here. And I'm just going to use one of the preset colors here. I'm going to call them pink. And I'm going to make sure that the shutter is open. So when I look under the program window, I have my palette set, the shutter is open, and the dimmer is at 100%. We go back to the intensity window here. I'm going to select my Rogue R1 beams at full also for those, at full enter, so full intensity. Let's go back to the palettes window. Now again, notice with the Rogue R1s that we also have some positions. So notice that this is a lighter color gray, if you want to color it. So we have black and we have gray. The gray meaning that it's active. Notice that in the color choices, we don't have these ones active or these colors available. That's because the Rogue R1 uses a color wheel for colors. So it's actually a color wheel with gels in it. So these are the available colors that you have in your color wheel. We're going to select magenta. We're going to select a certain looking gobo that looks like gobo 13. And we're going to position the light so that it is center. So with this particular head then, we have color, we have position, and then we have beam. All right, so we've set all of those things. When we look at this in the programmer, you can see that we have the Rogue R1 beam, dimmers at a percenter. The pan and tilt is set to center. The color is at magenta, and then there's a gobo 13. And there might be some other colors or whatever that are available in there, or some other things for the light depending on the individual light, which we're going to show you that in a moment. So let me go back to my intensity page here. We'll deselect the R1 beams. Okay, now we're going to take a look at our color band lights. So I've got all my other lights except for these. These are the strip lights that are in the back. Now these particular strip lights have a unique feature. You can split the strip light up into 3 sections and have each section be a different color. So each strip light does not have to be the same color. And that's where this other soft key view elements is going to come into play. So I'm going to select my color band strip lights. I'm going to say view elements. So we have 3 sections to each strip light. I'm going to select element 1, which would be 1 section of that strip light. I'm going to jump back to my palettes window and say red. Okay, back to intensity. Now I'm going to say view elements. I'm going to deselect element 1 and select element 2. Jump back to my palettes window, select green. Okay, jump back to my intensity window, select elements, deselect element 2, select element 3. Jump back to palettes and say blue. So now when we look at this under the programmer, so for element 1 I selected red, element 2 green, and element 3 blue. So if we look at this in the program window, here's my element 1, so that's one part of this strip light is lit up red. Here's my element 2, so it says red 2, green 2, blue 2. That's lit up green, and then part 3 is lit up blue. So if you have a fancy fixture like this where you can do, the fixture is actually split up into different sections where you can illuminate it in different colors. That's how you would access that. So again, as back in my intensity window, it's in my group window, but I can select view elements because this light has separate elements to it. if I was back in view heads here, I'm going to deselect these. The color dash par hexes do not have elements, so if I click elements, nothing comes up. They have to always come up under the same colors. But that's what that view elements means. If you have a head that is selectable, that there could be different colors for different parts of that particular fixture, you would look under view elements and it would be there. Okay, so if we look at programmer, then we've got all of our light information in here. Currently, we don't have any lights selected. Everything is unselected, but we have values in for everything, so it's ready to be recorded. And I'll just quickly do this, and we're going to record this into a queue instead of clearing it out. And then my next video is going to be all about recording cues, but just quickly here at the end, to record a cue is very simple. You can record a cue on any one of the playbacks. I'm going to put this on playback 9. I simply say, click on record, and it tells you here, select the playback or window item. I'm going to put it right there. Notice that once I record this, now that these turn purple, which means that they have been taken from the programmer and put into a queue. If I click clear, they will be gone, but then now I can play them back in the queue, and these values will actually come up, and we're going to show you that in our next video, the queue video.